I would like to go a little farther down the road into talking about doors and hardware. So, there's so much we could go over here, but I guess really what got me thinking about this was getting Tom's door and really enjoying it, removing my aluminum door, and at the time when I removed it and put my Dragon Tech door on, I was really starkly aware of the stark difference in weight. And again, there's no positive or negative here. It's not like the heavy one is worse or better, or the light one is worse or better. They were very different, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and they both serve the same function, but they have different pros and cons, and it's very much like heavy fire bricks and insulating fire bricks. It's a lot of the same conversation. But along those lines, I wanted to talk about not just steel doors and aluminum doors, but I wanted to talk about DIY doors, custom doors, and off-the-shelf doors, and or salvage doors. So just a little bit of conversation about hardware in general, because it tends to be, one of the sticking points for people traditionally, where I think we're starting to have a lot of solutions now that get people over this hump. But traditionally, we came from the J-tube and it was great. We didn't need hardware. And then when we talked about people DIYing their own rocket mass heaters, it was real easy to do because you didn't need anything but, bricks and mud and whatever else. But as we moved into the batch box era, we started to need doors and secondary hardware. And those things can be real sticking points for people. So along the way, we've come up with things like my aluminum door, some off-the-shelf doors, and now we've got awesome craftsmen like Tom at Dragon Tech who can craft, parts for you. So we're starting to get past these barriers. But let's just talk a little bit about what those options are and, how they might affect your build. So first and foremost is probably the idea of the salvage door. That one's really popular. A lot of people want to find a door, somewhere in the wild that is going to work for what they need it to work for, without, and they won't have to do a lot of fussing about modifications or anything like that. And so the salvage door route is one that I want to split up into two categories: firebox door and oven door. So in the case of the oven door, you can use just about anything. As long as you can get a good seal on it and close it, as long as it can take the temperatures, then size isn't an issue. There's no air inlets or anything like that are critical to the burn. So with oven doors, there's a lot of leeway there. One of my favorite sources for oven doors is old boiler doors off of eBay. That's what my big door and my big full masonry stove is, and it's a nice cast iron door. It's really heavy. It has really neat hinges, and it was fantastic. I think it was like $100, and it's a lovely door that I could never create myself. It has a big flange ring mounting thing that I was able to masonry screw into the stove body. So for oven doors, salvage is great. The firebox door, unfortunately, it's almost never going to work because the firebox door is it's pretty much mandatory that it is very close to original design specifications, and more importantly, it's got to have the right air inlet size. And if it doesn't, it's just not worth your while because it's going to wreck the efficiency and cleanliness of the stove. So in terms of salvage doors, for the firebox door, you usually aren't going to find anything that's going to work. For an oven door, salvage, almost anything is great. With that said, if you do keep your eyes peeled and you come across a door that looks right for the firebox, it is possible to come across a good one. And I just had a customer who did that, and it worked out great. So this isn't to say it's impossible, just that it's dimensions are the most important thing. And if you find one that matches your dimensions, you can use it, but otherwise don't try and put a round peg in a square hole, or however that saying goes. So salvage doors, we did that one. DIY doors. So DIY doors have traditionally been kind of the standard. What we've, there haven't been other options up until recently, so that's kind of what we've always done with these batch boxes. So there are some resources out there, there's on the forums, and if anyone, wanted to ask, I could certainly point you towards some great posts over the years of how people build their doors. There was one fellow in particular, and I don't remember who it was right now, but I could find the post, who really inspired me about the way he laid out his door framing. I'm not great with metalwork, so it was good for me to see different ways of building the frame and things like that. But in most cases with DIY doors, traditionally people have always thought steel, cutting and welding was kind of the only approach. And so that was sort of the standard approach for a long time. And then, I came up with my aluminum door, which really is actually just a piece of ceramic fiberboard, kind of with an aluminum skin. The fiberboard is really the door. That's the secret to it. People think of it as an insulated door, but it's almost the other way around. It's like the fiberboard is the door and this aluminum is just the skin. But by doing that, you enable yourself to build a door without any welding. You can rivet it or screw it together. You can cut aluminum with regular wood tools, a jigsaw or circular saw or table saw or whatever it is. So that kind of opens up a lot of doors, that's no pun intended, in terms of DIY stuff, because now you can do it without welder and without steel work, steel cutting and things like that, which really puts a lot of people off. In both cases, you're having to build a door, so it is a bit more of a project than like a J, but it's not too onerous, and the aluminum door is actually a really simple door to build. Now, the aluminum and the steel doors are really interesting to compare side by side. The steel is really heavy, feels really stout, feels like it's going to last forever, but it transfers a heck of a lot of heat through the door, and when you walk by it, I'm actually a little scared of it. I mean, it's real hot, like real hot, like it'll burn you in a second. The aluminum door is cool because it's backed by insulation. It really never gets that hot, and aluminum is interesting because it doesn't emit the heat, so you can actually it'll burn you if you touch it. It's that hot, but it feels much safer in terms of like if you have small children or clearances or things like that. The aluminum door is actually pretty nice. The other part of those weight issues is kind of the way they swing on hinges. So my lovely Dragon Tech door is heavy duty with heavy duty hinges that are going to last forever. But the aluminum doors are nice because they're light and they don't pull on the stove when you're opening and closing them. So there's just some pros and cons there, and I just kind of wanted to make sure that we don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were, and prioritize one over the other. And I guess really what I'm trying to say is I love my new steel Dragon Tech door, but I would love to reiterate how I'm still a really, really big believer in that aluminum door style of my old door, and so I don't want to give the impression that I moved away from that for any reason, any dissatisfaction. So from a DIY standpoint, you got a couple options there. You've got steel, aluminum. Those are probably about the only choices that I can really think of. I mean, there's variations on those themes, of course, but with that said, the aluminum doors are going to be real easy for folks to build, but you probably will come up with something that is, maybe is a little less finished looking. Mine, I thought, looked fine, finished, but certainly not the same as a welded steel painted door. It is possible to do welded painted steel doors quite simply, but it will be quite a bit more work. So do expect that. So we could go farther down that road, but we'll just leave it there for now. I just wanted to kind of talk about those on the DIY. And then we talked about off-the-shelf doors. So if you're buying plans from me, my plans come with a couple doors, depending on which plan you're getting, specified that you can purchase from, commercial manufacturers. Those doors have the appropriate primary and or secondary air inlet. And that's the most important thing. So if you find similar sized doors, you can check with me. We just need to make sure they have the proper cross-sectional area for any air inlets. And it's possible you could find one that's a close fit and get it to fit. But with that said, again, it's kind of like salvage doors, hard to find the exact right one. I do recommend the correct ones in the plans. You may be able to fit something that isn't the one that's in the plans in there, but definitely pay attention to the sizing and don't accept anything that's too far out of range, because it will greatly affect the performance of the stove.